I shoot a lot of interviews, multicam interviews, usually 2 cameras, sometimes 3, and they're sit-down interviews just like your traditional documentary or corporate interview setups. And I wanted to have cameras that have identical quality where I could just drop them into my editor, throw the same LUT or the same color correction and have them match identically. Because when I'm on set, I try to match everything else. And I was looking at, before this, I had the GH5s and a GH5 Mark I. And I was able to match them together, but the GH5s had better picture quality than the GH5. Even the colors at 10-bit, the GH5 was good, but then once you see it compared neck and neck to the GH5s, the S was better. And I thought, okay, the GH5 II, that improved from the GH5, and I wanted to see if that improvement would be a complement to the BGH1, if these would look good, and also to see how the BGH1 stacks up against the GH5s. Supposedly, the BGH1 has the same exact sensor as the GH5s. The difference is there's some processing power in the BGH1 that gives it, I think, an extra step of dynamic range and a little bit better picture quality. But in this video, I'm going to shoot them side by side, put the same LUTs on it, and just see what conclusions I can make if I'm going to use this for multi-cam interview setups, and if I could combine these cameras together, and maybe I can just sell my GH5s and I won't need to have them, because as far as my shooting style goes, or the purposes for this gear, the GH5s, since there's no image stabilization, I don't go handheld with this. This is always locked off on a tripod, and it's been perfect for documentary interviews that I've been doing. The BGH1 also doesn't have image stabilization, so it's not good for handheld unless I fully rig this out, and even then, it's not. I would really have to be careful. My rig has to be pro in order to get, and my technique. But the BGH1 and the GH5s, I think, will give you the same picture quality. So I wonder if I could just take out the GH5s completely and shoot BGH1 and GH5 Mark II side by side and see if that would match. The GH5 Mark II is phenomenal when you're going handheld because it has 6 stops of in-body image stabilization, and if you pair it with an image stabilized lens, you get even more image stabilization. And if I'm going run and gun or I'm shooting B-roll, this is the camera I bust out. So in a lot of the situations, if I keep all these cameras, what I'm plan on using them for is that these 2 cameras are going to be my sit-down interview cameras, and the GH5 Mark II, is going to be either a third angle, or it's going to be the camera that I leave on the side, and when I need to run and pick up some B-roll, I just get this camera. And now onto the test footage. I'll have some commentary and talk about it as I play the footage. Here's the test footage. On the left is the GH5 Mark II. On the right is the BGH1. I had tried to match the settings as close as I could. There I shooting both at 422 10-bit long op at f2.8 ISO around 400, and it's a daylight preset white balance. I had shot this in Vlog L, but I had applied the official Panasonic LUT to the Vlog L. So what you're seeing now is the LUT being applied to both cameras. Now I have the same settings, except I had increased the gain on both cameras to 3200 ISO. And I noticed on the GH5 Mark II that it's not handling this 3200 ISO as well as the BGH1. The BGH1 to me right now looks very clean, and the GH5 Mark II, I see a lot of the shadows, it's washed out, which is pretty interesting. Now I have adjusted the f-stop to 5.6. I left everything else the same, and it looks like they're fairly close. I'm noticing the reds and the greens aren't exactly the same on each camera. I think I prefer the reds on the left, the GH5 Mark II. These are also both on autofocus, by the way. So you saw in the GH5 Mark II just now that it was hunting autofocus, and the BGH1 was not hunting. So that might be interesting to note there. But I think the GH5 Mark II is more representative of what that gray towel that my dog is on, it was like. But the BGH1, it looks more rich in colors and more saturated, and I think it's more pleasing to the eye. Now I have added an LED light, an LED spotlight for fill. All the other settings have been the same. So, but previously there was no extra external lights on it, and now there is an LED light. The color of this LED light that I'm using isn't the best, so it's not very accurate. I think it might have a green or a magenta hue cast to it. But yeah, so I added just a fill light to see what it would look like when I added artificial light here. Now, this is the GH5s on the left versus the BGH1 on the right. I'm shooting Vlog L. I tried to maintain the same exact settings as the GH5 Mark II, so it's shooting 422 10-bit long GOP. That's the 150 megabits bitrate codec, and it's daylight white balanced. I'm shooting with the same lens at 35 millimeter zoomed in on a 12 to 35. It's at f2.8, and I have a LUT applied to this because I was shooting Vlog L, and this time it looks very similar in comparison to what the GH5 Mark II looked like, in my opinion. I think the GH5s and the BGH1 with the same exact settings and the same LUT applied looks very close. I don't know if I can even tell the difference. Now I got rid of the Vlog L, and what you're looking at is the Cine V picture profile on either camera. The BGH1 has the Cine V version 2, and the GH5s has the Cine V version 1. So it's just the Cine V. Everything else is pretty much the same. I stopped down the lens from an f2.8 to an f4, but everything else is the same. All the other settings are the same. And I just wanted to see what the new updated Cine V picture profile version 2 look like in comparison to the Cine V version 1. And I'm just moving the cameras here just to pan and see how it affects with the motions. And now I'm going to do the GH5s, just going down on that plant and going back up. Again, even though it's a different version of the Cine V, I can't really tell the difference. Now I have the GH5s, BGH1, Vlog L. This is the Vlog L, the LUT, the Panasonic LUT applied to both cameras. And in this case, I cannot tell the difference with the colors and the saturation and even the dynamic range. From earlier, when I had used the GH5 Mark II, I noticed a color difference in the reds and the greens. But with these two cameras, they look identical to me. You could fool me. I mean, I could have played a trick on you and put the GH5, the BGH1 on both sides, and you wouldn't have known the difference. Okay, so now I added a fill light. This is a LED light. It's not the greatest color rendition on the light, the CRI. But I just wanted to do a test with some fill light here. And again, I don't see a color difference between these two cameras. The GH5s and the BGH1 look identical to me, which is amazing. So, I mean, if you want this look and you find a GH5s for cheaper than the BGH1, maybe you just might want to get the GH5s because it doesn't look like there's much improvements. What I'm doing here is trying to simulate what it would be like if I was doing an interview and I had different focal lengths on each camera, because when I do a 2-camera interview, they're not the same focal length. I change one that's close up, one's a wide shot. So in this scenario, the GH5s is close, the BGH1 is wider. I think I had the GH5s at 50 millimeters and the BGH1 was at 25 millimeters. if this were in fact an interview that I was shooting, of a dog in this case, but if it was a person, the colors again look very similar. I didn't do much. I didn't do anything actually. All I did was shoot this in Vlog-L, match identical settings, exposure settings, and then I just dropped in the official Panasonic LUT, and this is what I got straight out of the my editor. I didn't no color grading, so these cameras match. I'm very impressed with how they match. Last thing I wanted to do is to test the GH5s and the BGH1 in a high ISO scenario. I would never shoot ISO 6400 on any camera. Maybe the Sony full frame I might do that because they have really good low light capabilities. But on a Micro Four Thirds sensor, I would never shoot 6400 ISO on a paid gig. But you can see here, I'm shooting 6400 on the GH5s and the BGH1, and I don't see a difference. I don't see it looking any worse from each other. So I'm really concluding after this video that the GH5s, I mean, when it comes to straight picture quality, at the end of the day, the GH5s and the BGH1 are identical to me. The other factors that are involved with the cameras is another issue.